What's a good intro for this video? What makes an intro? What is intro? Is this the intro? So we're back with something different than usual. I say that because today we're doing a little bit of an addendum to a video I've previously uploaded. This was a couple months ago, but I uploaded a video that was a tier list of staples. You might be saying, what? What does this have to do with the tier list of staples? We're staring at a Cyber Dragon deck list. To that I say, well, because I would like to talk about the staples we have in-game now that are good against this deck. I didn't want to make a full video that was just a whole nother tier list of staples when all I want to focus on is what beats Cyber Dragon. So, since we're going over staples, let's go ahead and start off with our legend cards, spells and traps. Now, there's not too many in the game. Since my last video on staples, we've only gotten Trap Hole added into the game, and to just say outright, no, Trap Hole does nothing for us. In fact, what I would like to say is what we shouldn't be playing if we're scared of Cyber Dragon. So legend-wise, obviously, you know, Warrior or Reincarnation, that's your spell slot. If your deck needs one of those two, if you're playing with Tyron or you're playing Warriors, or you're playing Heroes, you use one of those two. Pretty simple. Obviously, Tribute to the Doomed is still really good against Sidra. Just one, well, I was going to say 1-for-1 removal, but it's 2-for-1 basically, because you have to have Tribute and a card to pitch. Whatever. So Tribute's good. It's always been good. It's still good. If you don't need Reincarnation or Warrior, go ahead and play Tribute. That's a good card for that. The problem is what we shouldn't be playing. First of all, I mentioned Trap Hole. Trap Hole is really bad against Cyber Dragon. Obviously, if they Tribute summon Sidra, yeah, you can Trap Hole, but frequently they're going second and they're just specialing it because of course they drew Sidra and you had to go first, or I had to go first. I always have to go first, you know? So I really would not recommend playing Trap Hole, especially if you're building your deck to face off against the meta. You will be seeing Cyber Dragon so much. Next, Widespread. I say next like there's like some order. So Widespread is fine. Some of our decks are kind of forced to play Widespread. I would prefer not having to play it personally. I do prefer other cards. The issue with Widespread against Sidra is specifically because they can play Ancient Gear Golem, and Ancient Gear Golem solos Widespread. So that's a reason why I would say maybe don't play it. But I mean, if you can't help it, if you're playing like Light Machine or some other deck with a limit 2, I get it. We have to play Widespread. I really wouldn't recommend it though for the format. What I would recommend, of course, is Negate Attack. Negate Attack is super good. It's insanely good. It's still the best trap card in Rush right now. Frequently, I find myself winning games off the back of Negate Attack. Really. I'm sure you, the viewer, you've probably also experienced this. It's pretty universal the way this card works. Now, non-legend wise, we did actually get some new traps added into the game that I think are pretty decent contenders for going up against Sidra. One of them is Dragon's Fortitude. I think Dragon's Fortitude is a really underrated card. Well, Dragon in general is pretty underrated as a deck, to be honest. Usually people only play like Dragias Turbo, and I wouldn't recommend Fortitude for Dragias Turbo. But yeah, Dragon's Fortitude, it's pretty good. If you're playing like Dragias Fusion or Turbo for that matter, you can fit in Dragon's Fortitude and pretty much just make them crash their Cyber Twin Dragon right into you. And that's pretty good. It's both a tech card that can deal damage and it outs a big monster like Cyber Twin. Of course, Ancient Gear Golem still clears because you can't respond with trap cards, but whatever. Also, the brand new card Restoration I think is very underrated right now. If you're playing a deck, let's say like Miss Mutton or Psychics, I would recommend card Restoration for those kinds of decks that can just spam out their entire hands. But if you end on like, let's say 1 or 2 monsters, those kinds of decks would benefit greatly from restoration. Besides the fact that it keeps you alive, getting your hand right away is also really good. A little aside, I saw a really interesting tech choice for worms. You play card restoration after you put out your max monster, and because it gains attack based on cards in hand, card restoration makes sure that they can't seal array your monster down to be able to be swung over by Cyber Twin or Ancient Gear Golem. I thought that was really cool. If we are in the world where we're scared of Ancient Gear Golem, we can play our 1-up Forever Freeze. I know not everyone bought the Forever Freeze bundle, but you could tech this in as a way to basically out the Ancient Gear Golem. There are some other decks that Forever Freeze also, hits. It's playable against Galaxy if they summon Oblivion without Secret Order, which just sounds awful. But hey, it punishes that if they do it. It's really it for new traps. Spell-wise, we do have some decent options. So obviously, something like Secret Order is really good for decks like Galaxy and decks like Miss Button to just get huge and just beat the Cyber Dragons down. But they do end up being vulnerable next turn because, the attack goes back down. There's also a bit of an underrated tech. Card revitalization. Where are my Thunder Enjoyers? Thunder Enjoyers, sound off in the comments if you're here. This is interesting because I've encountered a lot of Sidra players who use this skill to set up for the next turn if they don't have the exact pieces. So card revitalization is pretty funny. So if they do play that, it punishes it by just wiping the entire hand. I think it's just a funny thing. Also, you can pump your boss monsters higher than the average Sidra and the average Cyber Twin. It's not the best. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's a pretty interesting tech card you can consider. There's also Mighty Gaze of the Sky Emperor. This is kind of just like a glorified stop attack, but that could be pretty decent. The way Cyber Twin's only 2100 defense, so a lot of decks can boost on-field monsters way over that. As well, Cyber Dragon itself is only 16, so it could come up where you just, do a little flip-flop on them. Unfortunately, it doesn't do face down. If Gaze set them face down, that would be a much more versatile card. Now for the last spell card I want to talk about as being a sort of decent pick. We have Blades of Divine Wind. This card is interesting. You kind of 3-for-1 yourself, but if you're playing something like Mitiron, where you're turboing out all these normal monsters, Blades could end up being a big buff if you combo Blades, pop 2 guys, pop Cyber Twin, and then you go into Star Restart, bring back one of your other guys, and then hopefully you have the card in hand to then just fuse that normal monster into, one of your big Mitiron boss monsters. It's not a great tech, but it is a tech. Now, there are also some new monsters that I think are pretty decent into Cyber Dragon. We have All-Seeing Harvey. I'm not going to assume everyone's seen this card. She's in the new selection box, which is pretty bad. It's mostly just reprints along with like 3 new cards that are actually worth like anything. And it's really hard to get what you want from that box. But I got All-Seeing Harvey. And during your main phase, you normal or special summon this card. Look at one face down card in your opponent's field. If that is a monster with 1500 or more defense, you can also destroy it. Now, the reason I mentioned before that if Gaze set the monster to face down defense position, it would be better, is because of this card. All-Seeing Harvey can pop face down Cyber Dragons. So decks like Earth Machine have ways to flip the opponent's monsters face down, so she combos really well with that, where you can take the set Cyber Dragon and just pop it. As well, of course, Cyber Twin also has more than 1500 defense, so you can just pop that. It basically just outs any card. It's basically a 2-card combo. You can draw All-Seeing Harvey and a monster spell card or a trap card that can flip the opponent's monsters, 2 cards, and then you just out it for free. And then you just out. As well, she can also see back row. So if you only have 1 spell trap destroy in your hand, you can Harvey take a peek at the back row. Let's say they have 2 cards set. You can check and they go, oh, look, they set a spell card, and you go, okay, let's pop the other one. Let's pop the unknown, and then maybe you'll hit a good trap card or something. To also step away from the generics, a good deck, full stop deck to beat Cyber Dragon would be Metarion. Metarion is really, really strong right now. Besides the fact that the Metarion boss monsters are all level 9, which gets around things like Buffered Slime, they also have great effects that if you can combo them along with Type Charge Beam, which is another new card that I will bring up right now. If you combo them with Type Charge Beam to basically have their second effects all online, each of the Metarion boss monsters can just wipe the field of Cyber Dragon. One specifically I want to point out is Metarion Hercules Star, which you can only get by leveling up UO, but its second effect to shuffle up to 2 face-up spellcaster type monsters on the opponent's field into the deck can basically out the entire Cyber Dragon board if you Type Charge Beam them to spellcaster. Usually, a big investment turn 2 Cyber Dragon board ends with either Assault, Search, along with a Cyber Twin Dragon. And basically, you just shuffle both of those away with Hercules Star, and it is free game from there. Metarion can easily OTK with this setup. Something as simple as Hercules Star comboed with Ashura Star or comboed with the spell card that boosts their attack could wipe the floor with Cyber Dragon. As well, like I mentioned, them being level 9s is huge. Along with their 2800 attack stat, putting them dead even with Cyber Twin. So they are forced to have Cyber Assault, Search, or Ancient Gear Golem to even out your fusion monster in the first place. Let's not even start on how you can just go in there also with Ashura Star, second effect, then you do like Seal Array to pump them down to go even harder on the OTK. Now, there is another deck that I think has a really good matchup into Cyber Dragon. I'll give a little bit of a preview right now, but if you want to see more and see the entire deck, you're going to have to subscribe and check out next week's video. Our little preview, we have our boss monster right here, the Steel Steve Martin Finari. And like I said, if you want to know what this card does, what deck it's used in, stay tuned for next week. Because this is all from me on how to beat Cyber Dragon. The deck is still insanely powerful, but I think if we take into consideration the cards I mentioned today, we can all have a much better chance of hitting King of Games while Cyber Dragon is still tier 0. Oh my god. Oh, queuing the Cyber, just queuing in the Cyber Dragon all the time. Oh god. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.